25 hours of labor, 6 of those hours persistent back labor, 72 minutes of pushing, and naturally 0 hours of sleep. But that baby hit her chest and she immediately looked up at me and said, I cannot wait to do that again. Now, is that a perfect birth? That's for her to decide. But that feeling, that love for all that she had just done and all that had just happened, you can find the same with me inside of my birth course, Your Body, Your Birth. Created by a labor nurse who has seen it all and a mama who has done it 4 times, YBYB has everything you need to understand what your body's actually doing, how to work with what your body's trying to do, and how to make decisions inside of that process that you feel really good about. You can walk into your birth calm, excited, and informed about every intervention and choice along the way. And you can walk out of your birth saying, I cannot wait to do that again. To save 20% and get started today, head over to thelabormama.com/birth or use the link in your show notes and be sure to input the code podcast at checkout.
Motherhood is all-consuming.
Having babies, nursing, feeling the fear of loving someone that much.
And there's this baby on your chest and boom, your entire life has changed.
It's a privilege of being your child's safest space and watching your heart walk around outside of your body.
The truth is, I can be having the best time being a mum 1 minute, and then the next I'm questioning all my life choices.
I'm Lo Mansfield, your host of the Lo and Behold podcast. Mama of 4 littles, former labor and postpartum RN, CLC, and your new best friend in the messy middle space of all the choices you are making in pregnancy, birth, and motherhood. If there is one thing I know after years of delivering babies at the bedside and then having and now raising those 4 of my own, it is that there is no such thing as a best way to do any of this. And we're leaning into that truth here. With a mix of real life and what the textbook says, expert insights, and practical applications, each week we're making our way towards stories that we participate in, stories that we are honest about, and stories that are ours. This is the Lo and Behold podcast.
I have got a birth story for you today for today's episode. I had brought on Kelsey. She was actually one of my students in Your Body, Your Birth, and she also was inside of my induction course as well. And you will find in her 2 stories that she was really able to utilize both because her 2 stories are not super similar and they did kind of progress and go differently, really starting inside of her pregnancies and then throughout the birth and the postpartum. So I love when you guys come on and you can share stories that are really different because I love hearing like what you pulled from one story to the other, what wisdom you brought forward, what you wanted to change, what you didn't want to change. And Kelsey's stories today are a great example of that. So let's get into those 2 stories with her. Hey, Kelsey, thank you so much for being here with me today. Why don't you go ahead and give us kind of more personal introduction of you, your family, your life, and then we'll just get into your birth stories.
All right. I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah.
So like you said, my name is Kelsey. I originally grew up in California, but within the last 10 months or so, within the last year, we moved to Seattle, and I live here with my son, my 2, almost 2.5-year-old, and my 2-week-old. So we are just adjusting to our brand new life here. Lots of big changes in the last year, but I'm so happy to be here.
I love having the really fresh perspective on here. I had a student a while ago come on and share, and right after her birth, I said, do you want to come on now? And she said, not yet. Like, give me some time to process, because I think there's the people who are like, yes, it's right here, and I want to share all of it before I forget or whatever. And then there's the people who are like, no, I need a little bit of space or time. And then, I'd love to share. So I think it's really fun to have that really fresh perspective. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're going to share both of those stories like we talked about before. Why don't you just kind of get into the beginning of that first one and even getting pregnant or deciding you want to have kids or however that looked like for you guys?
Yeah. So my husband and I got married in 2019, and we decided to wait a couple years to get pregnant, but we always knew that we wanted kids. And at the beginning of 2022, I was like, okay, it's prep time. So I met with a nutritionist. I started tracking my cycle. I was taking my temperature every morning. And then by July, when we finally decided, okay, it's go time, I'd had like 6 months of data collected. So we actually got pregnant really quickly, partially due to luck, of course. And then also, I think just knowing like the exact day I ovulated and everything. So that was July 2022. That part was easy. And then the pregnancy was not so easy. I get very sick in both my pregnancies, but the first time really took me by surprise. I was vomiting multiple times a day, starting from 5 weeks until about 18 weeks the first time around. And so at least I was expecting some nausea, but it's still like the constant vomiting took me by surprise. And then at the 20-week anatomy scan is when we got some not so great news that kind of flipped the whole pregnancy on its head. Everything with baby looked good overall, but the maternal fetal medicine doctor, the MFM, came in and said, hey, I hate giving this diagnosis, but your baby has something rare called an umbilical vein varix, which essentially means that there's like a bubble in the baby's umbilical cord on the inside. So when it inserted into the baby's belly button, there was a bubble in that vein that, as she put it, leads to a higher risk of stillbirth. And that, just hearing that word was like really scary in the moment. My husband and I tried to stay really calm, but then we went home and cried our eyes out and looked up everything. And she had warned us in advance, like, don't Google this. But of course you Google it and you see all these horrible things. But as we talked more with our doctors about it, it just meant that we were going to need a lot more monitoring. And I guess I should explain that the bubble could lead to clotting because the blood doesn't flow as smoothly through it. So we would have appointments pretty frequently from the 20-week scan until 32 weeks. I think like every 3 weeks we were getting growth scans. We had to have a fetal echo where they check on the baby's heart. That was like an in-depth 1-hour scan. So it was just, there was a lot. And then starting at 32 weeks, we had 2 to 3 appointments a week with a biophysical profile and an NST. And then one of the things that actually like impacted me the most when we got that diagnosis is the MFM said, you're going to be induced between 37 and 39 weeks. And I had always dreamed of having an unmedicated, completely like spontaneous natural birth. So this was like a really big shock and something that I grieved a lot, just grieving the loss of a normal pregnancy and the loss of the delivery that I had always wanted. But eventually, like as we got further into the pregnancy, all of his scans were coming back pretty good. We did get sent to labor and delivery a few times because he kept failing his NST, which was, I think, just stubbornness now knowing his personality. We were able to keep going, and I was able to advocate throughout that process. Hey, I want to go as late as possible. I want the 39-week induction. He is showing like that he's doing well. During that time, I actually took your class, Low, Your Body, Your Birth. And I also took the induction class. So I felt really prepared to just advocate and ask that we wait. And so eventually they did agree to the 39-week. And then we went into our induction day, and that kind of leads into the birth story.
Yeah. Let's get into it. I mean, I think you set us up really well. All of the BPPs and the NSTs and all of that, just in case people aren't familiar with that, the NST is when you go in and we put the monitors on, and basically it's like heart rate, contraction, kind of what you might be thinking of when someone's going in and then getting baby checked on. The BPP is adding in an ultrasound, and the NST, it becomes a lot more. And so it's not like a quick 20-minute in and out. Like I'm sitting here thinking you were in there 2 to 3 times a week, multiple weeks in a row, and you talked about mourning the loss of a normal pregnancy. And I think that's such a significant part about pregnancies like this, is that you have stepped outside of the bounds of normal. And normal pregnancy feels hard enough as it is, right? And you added a lot more appointments, a lot more hours, a lot more time away from like work, practically speaking, and things like that. So just, what I imagine you were ready to meet the baby because all of that was so much in your brain and heart. And then also battling the, like, I don't really want to be induced. So just such a juggle there as you kind of walk into your induction.
Yeah. And like you said, it's not a 20-minute scan. Like the BPPs, they usually
No.
ended up being close to an hour, and
Yeah.
we'd have to wait and be like, oh, has he had the normal amount of practice breaths yet? Has he done
Right.
the average kicks? And that whole time, I know in the back of my mind that if he fails this and we have to get sent to labor and delivery and he
Mm-hmm.
fails again, this baby might need to
Mm-hmm.
come out right now, because failing it means that he's not doing well inside of me. And
Right.
they kept repeating that he is safer outside of my body than inside once he's like fully cooked, and if they see any
Mm-hmm.
signs of turbulence. So
Right.
it was a stressful pregnancy.
Turbulence.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into the induction. Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a lovely induction. I'll just say that from the very beginning. I had been very nervous because I've heard all these horror stories of your
Mm-hmm.
body's not ready, it's going to take a very long time. And when we first came in, it was a Monday at about 7 p.m. and they said, you're at a zero, like you're going to be starting
Yeah.
from scratch here. And we're going to start you with Cervidil. We'll give you the dose. I don't know what the right terminology is. They'll start me on Cervidil tonight. And then
Mm-hmm.
we're probably going to need to do that 3 to 4 more times. They like prep me from the beginning. So every 12 hours, they had said that they would give me more to try and to ripen my cervix.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, great. I'm going to be here for days. Like this is
Yeah.
going to take a really long time. But by 5:40 a.m. the next morning, Aiden, who is my almost 2.5-year-old, decided he was going to break my water and get things going on his own.
Nice.
And I still don't know if that was really just him or if it was the Cervidil causing like some contractions and
Yeah.
getting things going. But the water broke on its own, and it kind of kickstarted everything into pretty fast gear. They did check me one more time after it broke to see. I guess I had asked to I advocated to hold off on other interventions to just see how my body progressed.
Mm-hmm.
And after a couple of hours, they checked me and they're like, you're at a 1. Like this hasn't actually moved along. But I was having pretty intense contractions ever since the water had broken. So they started pushing for Pitocin pretty quickly. And I continued to push back, like, let's just see what my body does. But by about 1 in the afternoon, so 5:40 to 1, like the contractions were really painful. And according to them, I wasn't really making any progress. So I agreed to let them start Pitocin. And I got the epidural pretty soon after that because I
Mm-hmm.
was like, these are painful enough. I don't want to experience it with
Yeah.
Pitocin too. And then after they got the epidural, they checked me again. They're like, oh, you're at an 8 now. So I don't really know what happened between you're at a 1 and you're at an 8 and
Yeah.
we need to start all these interventions. But I was grateful that I was that far along.
Mm-hmm.
And they put me into the throne position to help me just kind of get baby down. And at 5:10, they said, okay, you're complete. You can start pushing. And by 5:40, so less than 30 minutes of pushing later,
Mm-hmm.
baby was out. And it was gorgeous and not at all the long period that I had been expecting. I
Yeah.
did ask when I was pushing for a mirror. Actually, my husband reminded me, like, hey, do you want a mirror? Because he had known my birth plan in advance. So they brought one in and I was able to like use that to watch my progress as baby was coming out. And then right before the final push, my OB says, Kelsey, do you want to deliver him yourself? And I was like, hell yeah, I do. So I bent over and I was able to pull out his shoulders myself, like once I had done the final push, and pull him onto my chest. And it was just so, so special. Like
Mm-hmm.
being able to do that was beautiful. And I wrote in my journal that day, and I had recently looked back on this, but I had said I did so many things I thought I wouldn't and that I would feel so bad about, but it all worked out and I have my beautiful baby boy in the end. And like that's the feeling that I still carry to this day. It wasn't the birth that I had envisioned, but it was perfect for us. And it was
Yeah.
really only 12 hours from 5:40 a.m. to 5:40 p.m. of labor,
Yeah.
which is relatively fast for an induction. So I was just really happy with the whole experience.
Yeah. I mean, I love hearing I'm going to say like quote unquote positive birth or induction stories, like you kind of said when you started, because I think we hear the negative ones a lot more, but inductions can go well and they do go well. And it's just important to be able to hold both and know that, like, as we're teaching each other, encouraging or sharing, like if someone else is walking into an induction, maybe one they don't want, they need to know that they also can go well and that they can be hopeful and kind of navigate that line in between. It can be tough and they also can go really well. Yeah. Just kind of setting expectations more
And
fully, I think for people.
Birth education is a huge part of that too, and just knowing what you can expect and then how you can navigate the different options that they're throwing at you, especially in an induction when there's going to be more interventions. Knowing, okay, this is what Pitocin does, or my water broke, here's what I can expect of how long they'll normally give me. In retrospect, maybe I would have advocated for more time, since I did go from 1 to 8 so fast. I don't know at what point that changed. And if the Pitocin was really needed. And then maybe I wouldn't have gotten the epidural if I didn't have, like, if I'd gotten checked before. Like, there's just a lot of what ifs, but it all was beautiful and great. So but it did lead me to making a lot of changes for my second birth, which we can get into.
Yeah. Is there anything you want to share about that first postpartum or feeding baby or recovery? And then we can jump from there to getting ready for another baby. Why don't you do the postpartum stuff?
Absolutely. So I am like a huge proponent in knowing what you're getting into and all the different possibilities. So I ended up getting postpartum depression with my first baby, and we had known signs of baby blues and things like that, but I could tell pretty early on that the feelings I was having was much more than just regular baby blues. So Aiden, my first, was challenging as a newborn. We had all the stress from the pregnancy. I think I carried that in with me into the postpartum experience. But then Aiden also, we soon found out, had GERD, so reflux, but with pain. He also had a dairy allergy, which might have been causing some of the reflux. He had symptoms of colic and would just cry all day long. And the feeling of overwhelm that I had was so powerful. And like, I just threw myself into figuring out what was going on with him, but I didn't ever stop to give myself any kind of break. Like, it was 100%, I need to help my baby, and no time for, hey, I need to take a step back and have some space to just go sit in a room without a baby crying. Knowing that, being able to think through everything that I needed for me and for my baby and ask for more help. I had been hesitant to have my mom help us, hesitant to like ask for a meal train or whatever. So we were just trying to balance it all by ourselves, and it was impossible. So within a couple weeks, I started therapy, and when that wasn't making a big enough impact, my therapist suggested that I start Zoloft. So I did that a little bit later. I think I was 4 months postpartum when I started that. But eventually, between those things, asking for more help, and then also just baby getting bigger and starting to outgrow some of the harder things, we started thriving more. And I'd say about 6 months is when I felt like, okay, I've got things more under control now.
Was there anything going on with feeding as well during all of that? I know sometimes breastfeeding and postpartum depression, anxiety can kind of hand in hand exacerbate each other. So that makes sense too.
It did. So I exclusively breastfed for a whole year.
Okay.
And I was super proud of that. But it was not an easy journey, because I think the reflux and the dairy allergy were the two biggest factors. But whenever baby would feed, I'd be worried, is he eating too much? Is he not getting enough because he just spit up however many ounces? I also had to personally cut dairy out of my diet for that whole year, which was very challenging.
Not fun.
Yeah, but it's just the stress of not knowing what your baby needs and how you can help. And if he was having a really bad day, I would be hard on myself. Like, did I have a slip? Did my chai latte this morning accidentally have milk in it when I ordered it from the coffee shop? Did that salmon that I got from the corner store, like, did that have any dairy in the salad? Like, there was just so many questions, but we pushed through. I ended up going to more of an exclusively pumping process a few months in rather than just nursing all the time because I was
Yeah.
able to track more how much he was getting.
Mhm.
He always gained weight appropriately, but it was more reassuring to me to see how many ounces went into that bottle and then
Mhm.
estimate how many ounces came out of him because it was
Yeah.
it was projectile reflux. Like he would
Okay.
spit up 2 feet in the air and you just see this huge quantity of milk on the floor and go, was that the whole feed? Was that none of the feed? I don't
Yeah,
know.
definitely.
So he put us through the ringer for sure.
Yeah.
And he still
I
does.
know. It
He's a
makes me
fiery little
laugh
boy.
thinking about like him projectile vomiting because including me, like you see these reels or YouTube videos and it's a baby kind of like spitting up, right? And you're seeing kind of normal spit up and maybe they're happy spitter, blah, blah, blah. And then you don't really get education when you're like, but my kid is like launching spit up across the room. Like, where's the video on that? Is that normal? Because that's just not typically what you see portrayed in education. It's more that like normal type of spit up. And that is a little extra. He was being a little extra.
A little
So
extra. Yeah.
yeah.
We went to the ER when he was 9 days old because we called the
Okay.
pediatrician. We're like, he's vomiting. Like it is spewing
Yeah.
out of their mouth. And the concern there is pyloric stenosis,
Mhm.
which there's like a blockage in baby. So we had to go get checked out. Thankfully, he
Yeah.
didn't have that. But even at the time, we were actually a little bit disappointed that he didn't have that because that
Mhm.
can be corrected. Whereas all these other things is more of a long term. So he
Mhm.
just, he wanted to make sure that we did not get too confident in parenthood.
Got
He
it.
wanted to keep us
They're
on
good
our
at
toes.
humbling us. Yeah.
Yes,
They're really good at
exactly.
that. Although I will say when you were saying around 6 months, and we can use this to get into the next story, that you said around 6 months that you felt you were starting to feel like, okay, I'm getting this, I'm figuring it out. That is that also the point where you thought like, okay, when are we going to have another baby? Or was that later?
Oh,
Or
no.
when did you feel ready for that? Because it sounds like he was a little bit tough the first year and you was a big learning curve. And so obviously you did choose to have another one and they're pretty close together. So
Yes.
how'd you get to that place?
I'd say that it wasn't until well after a year, like about a year,
Okay.
that we said, okay, we can see ourselves doing this again. 6 months is
Mhm.
when I started to really enjoy motherhood. The first
Okay.
6 months, I was in pure survival mode. From
Yeah.
6 to 12 months, it was fun, but I was still overwhelmed. I didn't know
Yeah.
how we would possibly do it again. And then I think it was about 12 months when my husband said, I think we can do this again. And if we don't do it soon, we'll probably chicken out and not do it at all.
Yeah.
I think we both had some trauma from that first year. So I said, okay, give me 6 months. I just stopped breastfeeding. Like, give
Yeah.
me 6 months just for myself, and then we can do this again. So we found out. I guess should I go into the next part?
Yeah, please go ahead.
So we decided to start trying in September of 2024. We moved to Seattle 2 weeks earlier, and we're just like, okay, let's see what happens. And it happened again. We got pregnant on the first try. We were very fortunate, but we just kind of like it flipped everything on its head. We were in a brand new state, a brand new home,
Mhm.
just a lot of transitions. And now I'm pregnant again. And I was hoping that maybe I wouldn't get as sick this time, but that was not the case. I was very sick for 20 weeks this time around.
Mm.
And, but at the 20-week anatomy scan this time, I was feeling really nervous, wondering what
Yeah.
would happen. But baby was perfectly healthy. And it was such a huge relief and also like unknown territory for us to not have these constant
Yeah.
scans and interventions and people like just constantly poking and prodding me. I ended up going with an OB that many people recommended, and they said that she acts a lot like a midwife, which is true. We would sit down, she'd have 30-minute plus appointments with us, answer all of our questions. We never felt like we were being rushed. And I asked her pretty early on, like, what are the policies for an induction around here? Or like just how does everything work? And she said, honestly, we won't even think about induction until at least 41 weeks. And that was just so crazy for me, having had the experience of doctors telling me that 37 to 39 was going to be the average. So it was a big relief, and everything was just really calm this time around. But I didn't want to take anything for granted. So I decided to just build my village this time early on, using a lot of the lessons I'd learned the first time. So I ended up hiring a birth doula who was great and gave me a lot of advice and support during pregnancy. And then, of course, during the birth that we can get into. We hired a night nurse this time around to come 3 to 4 nights a week. I found a new therapist once we moved to Seattle. I was just like, I am not going to be the shell of the human that I was the first time. I am going to have more knowledge, more support, and just have that village of people so that I can feel confident throughout the pregnancy, birth, and postpartum experience. So all of that prep work really paid off, and I was able to actually enjoy this pregnancy, not feel the same levels of stress that I did the first time. My therapist helped me talk through all my concerns, so I didn't have as much fear going into that anatomy scan, going into the postpartum experience. So yeah, for those listening, I highly recommend just thinking through everything you might want and trying to establish those resources early on instead of scrambling last minute of, I don't know what I'm doing here. Please, someone help me.
Yeah, we hear that a lot, I think, with lactation, but it really does apply in a lot of ways. Because lactation, it's like, I'm always saying, find an LC that's in your network or whatever before, because you do not want to be looking for them when you're 5 days postpartum and you don't know who's in your network, or they're busy, or of course they're used to accepting patients, I'm sure, very quickly. But to have the numbers and know who to call so that when or if you need them, it's just right there. It's like a gift to yourself, honestly, like you're saying.
Yeah. The other
It's
thing,
so valuable.
along those lines, the other thing that I did was get a prescription for Zoloft before I needed it, like before birth, before any of it. And it's just waiting for me at CVS. I don't feel like I need it in this case, but she wrote it for me months ago, and it is just there whenever I need it, which is a huge relief, because the first time around asking for that help and being like, I need to find a psychiatrist or a doctor to write me a prescription was so overwhelming and such a big hurdle to me actually getting the resource that I needed.
Yeah. So had you come off it like after the first year or something with your first son, and then I'm assuming weren't on it in your pregnancy, it sounds like, and then
yes, I was not on
to
it.
you.
I came off it at about 9 months postpartum, I think.
Okay.
With my first. So I was on it from 4 to 9 months. And I was like, okay, I'm feeling good. Things are better. I feel more in control. I'm ready to wean off. So I did that with the help of my psychiatrist.
Okay. All right. If there's nothing else about this pregnancy, why don't we do the birth?
Yeah. So birth was 2 weeks ago. So like we talked about at the beginning, it's really fresh. And I went far past when I thought I would go into labor. I listened to your episode, Lo, about your first birth story, and I was also convinced that 39 weeks was going to be my date. And
for no reason,
weeks,
right? Like, why do we think that?
Yeah. But 39 weeks came and went, and I was getting super impatient. Like every night I'd go to bed, I'd give my toddler a huge hug, and then I'd wake up the next morning positively livid that I was still not having this baby. So 39 weeks and 5 days, I had an OB appointment, and I asked her to check me because I was curious and just hoping that I had made some kind of progress towards getting this baby out. And she said that I was 2.5 centimeters dilated and 70% effaced, I think. And I was like, okay, what are your thoughts on a membrane sweep? And so she said that she normally sees success around 3 centimeters dilated, that can kickstart labor. And I said, well, 2.5 kind of rounds up to 3. So let's try it, because I am done. I do not want to have this baby inside me anymore. And so she agreed, and she did the membrane sweep, and it wasn't painful. I know a lot of people say it is, but in case it makes anybody out there who's afraid of it feel better, I did not find it painful at all. And as she did it, she said, oh, I feel you contracting. And I was like, oh, you do? I don't feel anything. But it kind of got me a little bit excited that maybe my body was already working on something, or she just kickstarted something. But my husband and I went out to dinner after that appointment. We got chocolate cake for dessert at a different little shop and just had like a lovely date night that ended up being our last one for a while because we went to bed at 9 p.m. and at 11 p.m. I woke up feeling intense contractions. Like things were definitely happening. And I was nervous about whether it was the membrane sweep just causing irritation or if I was in actual labor. So I messaged my birth doulas, and I had two of them that would switch off depending on who was available. And they suggested that I try these things to see if it either stalled out the contractions or made them more intense. So first was to drink 32 ounces of water with electrolytes. Second was to do 5 30-second inversions. So go upside down on the couch.
Mm-hmm.
And then 3 was to go sit on the toilet for 15 minutes, I think, sit backwards on the toilet. And I was like, sure, whatever, let's do it. So I got up and I did those things. And even walking around the house to fill my water and stuff, the contractions were kind of taking my breath away. Like they were already very intense. And I started timing them out, and they were 5 minutes apart, lasting for about 1 minute. I was like, oh, okay, these are coming quickly. They're intense. We'll see what happens. And by the time I'd finished all 3 of my tasks from the doulas, they were now 4 minutes apart, lasting over 1 minute. And the doulas were like, we're on our way. Like things are happening. So I went upstairs and I started to get dressed. And up until this point, I didn't want to wake anybody up because I didn't know what was actually happening. But once I went back into the room, my husband noticed and he got up and he starts getting things ready and goes down. My mom had been staying with us to be our child care for our toddler if and when I went into labor. So he woke her up. She comes up into our room to stay there near the baby. And we're just like, okay, it's go time. Let's wait for the doula to come. And at this point, it's now like 1:30, 1:15. And my husband put the TENS unit on my back, which was incredible. Like by far the best pain relief I had. And I would turn it up whenever I'd have a contraction. We kept waiting and timing. And now at 1:30, I was contracting every 3 minutes. The contractions were lasting like 1 minute and 10 seconds. And it had been 2.5 hours that they were getting closer and closer together. So we called the doula and she's like, okay, scratch the original plan. I'm not going to come to your house anymore. We'll just go meet at the hospital at this point. So when all was said and done, we finally got checked into our room at the hospital by 2:30. And triage had confirmed that I was 5 centimeters dilated now. I was a little bit disappointed with that. I was kind of thinking that the intensity meant that I was further along, but they said, like, you're a second time mom. You had a pretty quick birth the first time, especially given that it was an induction. You're here at the right time, believe us. And I was like, okay, fine. So they started checking my blood pressure and I had to sign a couple of pieces of paper. And when all was said and done, they let me get into the birthing tub, and I gave birth at UW Northwest here in Seattle. And they have these gorgeous, huge birthing tubs that are big enough for like 4 people. And my doula, while I had been doing all the check-in things, she put up this like starry night projector that would change colors, and she had string lights and she played my birth playlist, and it was just gorgeous and so serene. So I got in the tub, my husband got in with me. Like I said, they're huge tubs, and he was able to squeeze my hips during each contraction. And he kept reminding me to relax my body. Like he had done a lot of preparation too, which I'm so grateful for. And contractions just kept getting more intense. And I'd been breathing through them. I'm now moaning through them. As the intensity like strengthened, I turned to my husband and I said, I need you to yell at me with this next contraction. He's like, what do you mean? I'm like, just tell me I can do this because I'm losing hope here. And so he like tried his best, but he's not a yeller. He's a gentle giant. But he kept doing his thing. And it wasn't long after that I turned to my doula and said, "Can I get checked? Can you ask the nurses to check me? Because I'm feeling pushy and I want to know like where I am." I was also really hoping that at this point I was in transition because I
Yeah.
was having that second thought of, I don't know if I can keep going, especially if it's going to be a really long time. So I got out of the tub, they checked me, and the nurse said, "You're about 7 or 8 centimeters dilated." And again, I really felt like it should be more than that, especially because I'm now feeling this urge to push. But like I felt that disappointment. And my doula says, "Look, you can trust your body here. Like, let's not push quite yet. But if you feel like you're ready, like, let's start getting ready to push. So I'm going to go
Mhm.
have you sit back on the toilet again, the dilation station, and
That's
see
right.
if that can kick things along. And then we'll get you back in bed." I was like, "You're telling me that I can push even though I'm not at a 10." She's like, "Just trust your body."
Yeah.
So I did. I sat on the toilet for a little bit. I did not push on the toilet. But once I went back onto the bed after 3 contractions on the toilet, I felt the fetal ejection reflex. Like my body was just getting this baby out right now. And I don't know if it was the moaning that I was doing, the change in my voice, but all of a sudden there were 10 people in the room. The nurse literally grabbed an OB as she walked out of she was doing a C-section. She had like just finished. They grabbed her, pulled her in, and one push later, and baby Ethan was on the bed. I had pushed in all fours, and he just
Mhm.
popped right out immediately. My husband nearly missed it. He had asked, he was like, "Give me 2 minutes. I'm going to change out of my wet bathing suit." He had just barely gotten back when this baby popped out.
So
It
funny.
was so intense and so fast, but I will say that the crown of fire, or the ring of fire, that was
Mm,
more intense than I'd expected it to be. But
yeah.
everything else up until that point, I didn't really think of as pain. Like I had felt intensity in every contraction, but it wasn't until that ring of fire that I was like, "Oh, this burns," and then baby was out. Like it's
Yeah, it's
done.
short. It's so
It's
short.
very
Yeah.
short. But yeah, he came right out and I was able to pull him to my chest. He literally landed headfirst on the bed. I was hoping someone might be able to catch him, but they didn't.
Whoops.
I think they weren't quite expecting him to come out as fast as he did.
Yeah.
But I pulled him up and I turned around and it was just so great. And it felt like a redemption from my first
Yeah.
time. Like I finally was able to get the birth that I had hoped for. And also in my first birth, I felt so much fear once those contractions hit. Like I tensed up and I didn't allow my body
Yeah.
to relax and kind of like flow with the waves. But this time, like I was so focused on just breathing and moaning through them that I felt really powerful coming out of
Yeah.
that second birth and being like, "Wow, I did it. I actually was
Yeah.
able to do it and let go of all those fears that I had held in my first experience through this."
It's really cool to listen to you talk about the difference between the two and fear because I talked about this in an episode about like pain-free birth and the fear, tension, pain cycle and all that. And I think sometimes people start to think, oh, that's kind of woo-woo, like you're getting a little silly about what does or doesn't hurt or what does and doesn't isn't connected, I guess. But I think it's cool to hear stories when you can say, no, I know I was more scared and it did feel differently, or like I was more anxious and it did feel differently. And that's not to say you're not allowed to be scared or whatever, but just that you could feel and kind of see the difference in the way your body and your mind and your heart were kind of processing what was going on and am I safe and am I okay? And it does. I mean, it does change how it feels and not just if it's painful or not. Like I didn't have pain-free births either. And it
Yeah.
sounds like, yes, you felt some pain as well, but it can change like your ability to say it was intense but not to
Yeah.
say like I felt like I was dying, like to kind of navigate that difference. I do think like fear and anxiety, it is really impactful in that, and it's part of this conversation. So I like hearing someone who really felt the difference in two stories. It's cool.
For sure. And I mean, the first time I had never felt a contraction before. So once it
Yeah.
started, I panicked and was like, "This
Yeah.
already hurts. It's going to hurt more." Like, and now they're talking about Pitocin. That's going to like
Right.
kill me. Like, I so quickly spiraled into just give me that epidural. But this time, as I went through my pregnancy, I did a lot more prep work of watching on YouTube unmedicated births and seeing how people like breathe through it and move through it. I'd also done one of the tricks that you suggest of holding ice in your hand for a minute and breathing through it. So I was just more mentally prepared going into it.
Hmm.
And so once it started, it didn't feel like absolute panic at first. It was like,
Right.
okay, we're going to see how far we can get through this process. And the other thing that I will note, and I don't know that how much this affected it, but my first birth, my water broke at the very beginning. And that
Hmm.
kind of is what kickstarted. With this birth, my water didn't break until Ethan was born. Like
Okay.
as he came out is when I had my rupture. So I've heard some people say that having your bag of water is intact makes it less painful. So
Yeah.
I don't know if that's true, but in my case, like the contractions felt different, both
Yeah.
mentally from the preparation I had done, but I think also physically having that extra protection and insulation from the bag of waters instead of having baby like just pushing right down and causing all this
Mm.
extra pressure, I think played a role in it too.
Yeah. It's always made sense in my head. And then I think of the millions of moms who would be like, no, labor hurt really bad and my bag of water wasn't broken, so it's like, it makes sense
Yes.
to me. My bag of water with all my kids broke right at the end. So again, like I never had that. The opposite. Again, I love that you can kind of juxtapose your two experiences. So I only have the one thing of like, this is how it felt for me. And the bag of water was always intact. So I'm sure that there are lots of moms who would agree with you. And I can just hear the moms who are like, no, that bag of water doesn't make it easier. So it's personal, but you can compare your two, which is really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
I know you are just barely into postpartum, but anything that feels like really relevant or has come up so far in these couple of weeks you guys have all been together?
Yeah, well, I think this kind of goes back to the birth story, but it's also affected me more postpartum. But my third stage of labor, delivering the
Yeah.
placenta, was problematic this time.
Right.
So I once baby came out, I was able to hold him. I turned around and I got on my back so that they could do all their evaluation stuff. And about 30 minutes after baby had been born, the doctor says, hey, we've been doing Pitocin to get the placenta out, so active management, but it's not coming. Like there's no signs that your placenta is trying to deliver itself. So we're going to start doing some more things to get this moving, including more fundal massages. And they started very gently tugging on the umbilical cord. And I was like, just do whatever. I don't care. I have my baby.
Yeah.
It's fine. Another 15 minutes went by and the placenta had still not delivered. And at this point, they were starting to get visibly nervous. My doula later told me that I had started hemorrhaging a little bit. Like there was just more and more blood coming out as my uterus was contracting, but the placenta just wasn't delivering. And so they eventually said, hey, we're going to need to manually extract this. Like you have a retained placenta. The entire thing is lodged in there. This is going to hurt is what they directly told me. And so they said, we can give you nitrous gas or we can give you some fentanyl in your IV. And I looked at my doula and was like, I just had an unmedicated labor. I've been trying to avoid any extra interventions. What are your suggestions? And she was like, get the drugs. Your baby is out. This is going to hurt. Get the drugs.
Yep.
So I was like, okay, fine. So we did the fentanyl. They said that it'd feel like I had a glass of wine. I don't think I felt very different. But all of a sudden, she gloves up and just reaches her entire arm inside me up to like her elbow and just starts rooting around. And I could see her arm like swooping back and forth. And I had a 2nd-degree tear and they couldn't give me lidocaine until the placenta was out because there was so much blood. So that whole time I'm feeling her tugging on my open wounds. It was not a great experience. I don't want to like scare anybody, but I had never heard.
It's real. It happens. So
yeah.
I
hadn't prepared for this. I had prepared for the birth, but not the post, like the third stage of labor. I knew what was supposed to happen in my first pregnancy. It just came out. But all of that made it really difficult for me to have like a golden hour with my baby because I'm in pain. I like, even though with the fentanyl, like it's reducing the pain, the lack of stitches and lidocaine and stuff going on where I had torn, plus the pressure inside me, it was pretty brutal. And so I didn't want to like have my baby latched on while I'm kind of squirming and in this discomfort. So that part wasn't as beautiful. And I think even now mentally I separate my birth experience from the third stage. I don't want it to like impact the actual birth of my baby because that was so perfect. But it wasn't something that I was expecting. And so to answer your question, postpartum, I feel like I've been a lot more tender this time around than I was the first time. I've had more cramping in my sides and just feeling like this dinner plate size scab that people talk about from your placenta detaching is like extra tender this time around. I don't know if it's extra big or if it's just in my head, but I've felt much more fragile moving around. So I've been trying to take it physically easy and just allow my body to recover from that experience. And in the end they were able to manually extract it in one whole piece. There wasn't anything left over. And they think that a part of the reason is it was all the way up at the top. So fundal, I think is the term, or fundus. It was at the fundus.
Yep.
And so when my uterus was contracting, it just wasn't accessing that tippy top where the placenta happened to be. And that's why they needed to manually go in and get it out. So that was the less great part about my birth, but it has affected me more postpartum and just needing to be a little bit more gentle.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. I'm just sitting here and I'm like, it's been 45 minutes. Do you just want to go hold your baby? She's not holding her baby while she's talking to me. So I'm like, this has been too long. You're only 2 weeks postpartum. You need to go hold your baby.
He's sleeping on dad right now. So he's good.
He's happy. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there anything else? I know, again, it's only been 2 weeks, but like anything else you can think of? I know you said you're feeling great right now in terms of mental health, which is amazing. Anything else that's come up, or sibling, introducing the siblings, anything like that?
I'd want to give some hope to anyone nervous about going from 1 to 2. I know everyone has their own experience of like, it's going to be extra hard. How am I going to manage everything? What's the sibling going to do? And in my case, it is pretty fresh. We're coming up on 3 weeks soon, but it has been so much better than every fear that I had concocted in my head.
Good.
His big brother absolutely loves him. We've had no issues with jealousy. He was pretty independent before. And so I think the fact that he's not like always attached to me has made it really easy because he doesn't mind that baby is attached to me and then just like, again, the mental preparation. I knew going into it how hard things can be when you're sleep deprived and you're trying to nurse and you're doing all these things. So I just felt like it was much less overwhelming this time. I was more comfortable like with nursing positions. I could just get baby latched pretty easily. I knew like, hey, some babies fight sleep sometimes. You're just going to get through it. It's okay if they're crying as you're rocking them. Like you'll get through it and the baby will sleep and everything will be all right. And like my mantra is just, it keeps getting better. I can look at my toddler and think we went through hell and back in his first year. And now he's talking and chatting and showing his baby brother his trucks. And it's just so special to watch these kids go by. So even though I personally find the newborn stage to be really hard, I'm really trying to soak it in and know that every day is going to get a little bit easier. So that's my advice.
That second time or third, fourth, whatever wisdom that you pull forward, it just changes the story every time. There's a piece that can't be bought. I don't think it can be found in a course, which maybe I'm not supposed to say that since I have my own, but like the own wisdom, that hard fought for wisdom that you get is just, it's something you have to find and get, and then you get to bring it with you in the next one. And I think it just like changes everything. So I'm super proud of you. Thank you for your time today too. Again, You look great. You look delighted to be here. And I know that
I'm
having a
thrilled.
almost 3-week-old is a lot. So thank you for that. Okay. One fun question. Maybe I can guess the answer, but you can surprise me too. What's just something in life right now that is just bringing you tons of joy? It's probably the baby and the boys, but if it's something else, that's great too.
I feel like the easy answer is saying like having a sweet baby boy, but I think honestly it's watching my older boy just love on his baby brother and seeing that connection already grow. And I'm so proud of him. Every time he interacts, we haven't had any issues of jealousy, and I'm sure that they will come as we have new challenges. But just right now, I'm just so proud of him, and it really makes me emotional to watch their sweet little bond grow.
It's the best thing. I love it.
It is.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey, for your time. It was a joy to hear the whole thing and not just, DMs and messages. So it's fun for me too.
Thank you so much. I love the podcast. I'm excited to keep listening.
Thanks, Fred. Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank you so much for listening to the Lo and Behold podcast. I hope there was something for you in today's episode that made you think, made you laugh, or made you feel seen. For show notes and links to the resources, freebies, or discount codes mentioned in this episode, please head over to loandbeholdpodcast.com. If you aren't following along yet, make sure to tap subscribe or follow in your podcast app so we can keep hanging out together. And if you haven't heard it yet today, you're doing a really good job. A little reminder for you before you go. Opinions shared by guests of this show are their own and do not always reflect those of myself and the Labor Mama platform. Additionally, the information you hear on this podcast or that you receive via any linked resources should not be considered medical advice. Please see our full disclaimer at the link in your show notes.